Now, amid calls for Eskom CEO Andre de Ruyter to resign, the Auditor-General gave a mixed report card to the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. While the power supplier has been able to reduce its debt by 81.9 billion rand over the past year to just over 400 billion rand, it still recorded a loss of 18.9 billion rand after tax in the 2020-2021 financial year. The utility is trying to unbundle into three separate operating units. Lindsay Dentlinger is following this story for us. She joins us now live from Cape Town. So, Lindsay, what is giving rise to the ongoing irregular expenditure and who's being held accountable?
Well, Shahan, we don't exactly have answers as to why this irregular expenditure is continuing. What the Auditor-General has said, however, is that Eskom can't continue to blame the past for the situation, that it cannot blame old contracts that were entered into irregularly, because it is finding that irregular expenditure continues. It may be, Parliament heard today, that National Treasury might be taking a little too long in some instances to approve some of this expenditure, and to keep operations afloat, Eskom is having to get into this kind of irregular expenditure to deal with its operational needs. But those answers will probably come when Eskom themselves come and answer for the findings of the Auditor-General in the next couple of weeks. But certainly the Auditor-General not happy about the irregular expenditure, and a lot of this, Shahan, has to do with poor record keeping. The Auditor-General saying they're not even sure that the audit that they've conducted is in fact a true reflection of the state of affairs of Eskom's books, because the paper trail is missing, and so that they cannot test these transactions against the laws and whether Eskom has complied. And unfortunately, the Eskom management also wrapped over the knuckles by the Auditor-General for not instituting sufficient consequence management. The Auditor-General saying that we're seeing so-called big fish in the dock on our television screens being held accountable for dodgy contracts at Eskom, but we're not seeing anything happen to ordinary officials who are responsible for this irregular expenditure and who are failing to keep the books in order. The Auditor-General's office saying today that they couldn't even get Eskom to produce a register of its COVID-19 related expenditure. And as we know, everybody's had to get into some type of expenditure related to this pandemic, but Eskom couldn't show any records to the Auditor-General for it to be able to make a proper finding, Shahan. But here's one of those officials speaking on behalf of the Auditor-General's office. We've got to remember that the Auditor-General's office doesn't audit Eskom directly. It makes use of auditing firms to do so, and here's one of those officials who conducted that audit.
There isn't really adequate or effective steps taken to collect revenue from Eskom customers, and the argument that will always be there will be to say that no, but Eskom is doing more than enough to recover debts from municipalities and big corporates. But when we select our samples, we do not only select the big customers. We only look at the household, the circulars, and the normal men on the street. And I think that's where our biggest finding was the fact that when you look at this household accounts, there's quite many instances where you find that there is no evidence that warning letters or notifications were sent to the customer to say that please pay up.
So concerns also expressed about the general state of Eskom's debt.
So as you've heard in that clip there, the Auditor-General's office saying it doesn't feel that Eskom is doing enough to recoup money that's owed to it. And within the next 5 to 6 years, it's going to have to dock up around 152 billion rand to start paying back some of that debt, and also paying the interest related to that debt. And as we know, government is the guarantor for that debt. And so the Auditor-General's office has flagged as concerning. It says the pressure is mounting on Eskom to do better to generate revenue. Otherwise, it will come down to the state having to fork out the money for it to be able to make these debt repayments. And so that is really the big concern from the Auditor-General's office, and saying that it feels Eskom can do more to rake in the money that's due to it.
It is clear that effective and appropriate steps were not taken to prevent irregular expenditure. So for us, as I indicated, it is our view that this irregular expenditure is not only related to legacy contracts. We have irregular expenditure that is recent, that is related to recent contracts. So it is our finding that there are ineffective or inappropriate steps as far as ensuring that irregular expenditure is not further incurred.
All right, Lindsay Dentlinger is in Cape Town.